Alright guys, Ryan again with Trident Fly Fishing. I'm going to tie a Bunny Baitfish fly, which is a super versatile fly that I use for pike, smallmouth bass. You can even tie it for big brown trout. Stripers eat it, everything eats it. I'm going to start off with a size 1 Gamakatsu B10S stinger hook. Thin gauge, really sticky hooks that I like. They don't come out. I'm going to use some 6/0 white thread, uni thread. And I'm going to tie on right behind the eye. The first step is to grab, I'm going to use some small bead chain eyes. I like a brighter color, like a yellow or a red. In this case, this is sort of like a pink color. I'm going to fix them right behind the hook eye. Couple of figure 8 wraps. Position them where you want them. Get them nice and even. And then you're going to wrap underneath the eyes like this, creating a bit of a donut that keeps those eyes from spinning. A couple wraps behind, a couple wraps in front. And you can tell that I can kind of test them. They're not going anywhere. That's good to go. All right, so now I'm going to create a thread wrap on the shank as I go back. Doesn't have to be perfect because we're going to cover this up as we go back towards the eyes. Right back towards the end of the shank. And the next step, because this is a bunny strip fly, we're going to be using the tail material is olive. It's actually it looks more like white or gray barred Magnum rabbit strips from Hairline. And this is a super versatile tying method that I think you'll appreciate whether you're tying for stripers or pike or tarpon. The issue with a tail like this one is, first of all, it's relatively heavy, and a lot of times this material will foul, meaning you'll cast it a few times and the tail material will wrap around your hook. And if anyone's ever been tarpon fishing, you know that you do not want your tail to foul, especially in those moments where the fish is sliding across the bottom towards you. So this little method, using some 50-pound monofilament, will highly reduce the likelihood that your tail will foul. And I'm going to tie this is about 3.5 inches of 50-pound monofilament right off the back of the hook shank. So I'm not going to tie it down into the bend. I'm going to keep my thread right on the last sort of flat part of the hook shank. I'm going to put that 50-pound tip right there, right on top of the hook shank. A couple loose wraps so I can position it, and then I'm going to really crank it down. I don't want that going anywhere. Great. And you can kind of pull on it to test. That's on there pretty good. I'm going to take this tail material, which is the Hairline. This is a Magnum, so it's an extra large rabbit strip. You can see that the leather is sort of flat here. I'm going to create a little bit of a triangle with my scissors. And that just kind of reduces the surface area for the thread. Gives it a little point of purchase when you tie this onto the top of the shank. So I'm going to take that end, tie it right onto the top of the hook. You get a little tag, a little excess, that's fine. Cover that right up. Great. So now what I like about using this entire piece is I can kind of measure and see how long I want it to be. And I'm going to go back to about this point in my vise. I would say it's back about 3.5 inches. I'm going to move my scissors through the fiber onto the leather of the rabbit, make a nice clean cut. There's my tail. Now, what am I going to do with this foul guard? Well, we're going to use this hook point to our advantage. And what I'm going to do is actually create a little hole in the leather on the rabbit strip. And after I do that, the foul guard will go through that hole. I'll tie it back onto the hook and it'll create this nice little foul guard to reduce fouling. So I'm going to spin my hook point up. I'm going to create a little bit of slack in my tail. I'm going to find the midpoint with the point of the hook, and then I'm going to pull it right through. You can see the hook point on the other side now. And pull it back over, and you can see, you'll be able to see the hole that you just created. So what I'm going to do is take this point end of the monofilament and go through that hole. I'm going up, right? Not down. I'm going to go back up from the leather side to the fiber side. Push that through. And you can see it's right in the middle. If you make the hole close to either side, these tails will have a tendency to break or tear. So right in the middle will create, it's a nice balanced spot with plenty of material on either side. So I'm going to pull that forward. And you can see if I don't do anything to it, it's going to create this big bulky loop. I don't like that. So I can actually, this is mono, I can get it to a point that I like. And you can see right about here, it's sort of in line with the fly. I can pinch this back part down. And that'll, see how that narrowed the profile of the monofilament? I just pinch it right at that point. And now I'm going to tie that excess in right on top of my thread. Make sure that's on there really good. Great. So now I have this loop guard coming off the back. And that, you can see, it allows some flexibility, but it's very hard for this material to get down where it might foul. So the next step is I'm going to cut this tag end from my guard. Now I have my tail. Great. That's going to have a lot of movement. I know it's not going to foul. That makes me happy. I'm going to add a little bit of Marabou here just for some bulk as I work down towards the hook eyes. So the next step, I'm going to grab some white, strong Marabou. The longer Select Marabou has these nicer, longer quills. This first little bit of the quill tends to be kind of weak, so I pop that right off. And I'm going to start tying in from here. So I'm going to tie that right on the top of the hook. And you can do this with 2 or 3 at a time. I'm just going to do one to kind of show you how I would work this. Again, you can use a rotary vise to make this more easy. I'm going to palmer this forward. I like using my fingers to kind of pull that material back as I go. And what I like to do here is I'm just creating a little bit of movement, a little bit of micro movement, and a little bit of bulk for the body. So I'm just pulling those fibers back as I wrap. And you'll see some of them will catch. You can kind of use your scissors to straighten them out. And if you're used to using the rotary vise, feel free to go for that now. I just like to kind of get this started by hand. I feel like I have a little more control. Creating that nice body. I'm going to pull some quills off this side. Gives me a little bit more control. Notice that the fibers don't go back farther than the tail. It does add a little bit of, will absolutely add some movement to this fly. I get to this point where I'm a little bit, you can see I'm a little bit past. I've wrapped a little bit to the right of the hook point line. And now I'm going to tie the Marabou in, one wrap over the top, another one, pull all the fibers back, a couple of thread wraps in front to capture all that material, so I know that Marabou is not going to come undone. I'm going to cut the excess here. And depending on how bulky you want this body, you could add another piece of Marabou here. This is going to be pretty slim, which I like. But again, all these little fibers will create micro movement, especially if you're fishing this in a current. So now I'm at a point where I'm nearing the sort of collar of the fly. And I'm going to use some 5 to 7 inch saddle hackle in white. And this is from Hairline. And I'm probably going to need at least 3. I'm going to start with a pair. So I'm going to choose 2 feathers that are relatively even in length and width. I want them to have some bulk and some webbiness. I want them to look sturdy because I don't want them to break. Hold them together. I'm going to clear a little bit of that fiber so I have the quills to tie in here on the top. Make sure those are really locked in. And now I'm just going to move my hook thread, move my thread up the shank and let it sit right behind the eyes because that's where I'm going to end up. I might be able to wrap this entirely with 2. So again, my goal now is to cover the exposed shank. I have the bulk of the Marabou. I know that's going to give me some movement. And I'm going to wrap here. Again, rotary vise is great. I prefer to do it this way. Call me old-fashioned. Pulling, you can see as I'm palmering forward, I can pull that material backwards to create that nice sort of tapered look. And size of the feather is kind of reducing as I turn it, which is nice because that adds to that tapered look. And this is going to be plenty of material to get me. I'm going to go right behind those eyes. I don't want to leave much of a gap. I want it to flare right up from behind those eyes, just like that. So I'll probably give one more wrap. That's looking really good. I'm going to hold this tight so that I can put my thread wrap behind it a couple times. 1, 2, 3. And now I'm going to wrap a couple times in front. 1, 2, 3. Once more and back. And the most frustrating part of this fly is if you don't do this part enough, if you don't lock in that material and you cut it, the palmer will come undone and you're going to be frustrated. So I pull the material back, tie a little bit in on top, tighten that down. I'm going to tie through the eyes to the front of the hook, right behind the eye of the hook, and I'm going to whip finish. 1, 2, 3, 5. Great. I can pull these right off. And that is a fine looking rabbit strip or bunny baitfish fly. This fly is versatile. You can fish that for tarpon or snook, striped bass, largemouth bass, smallmouth bass, big brown trout. And it's also a good pike fly. Lots of movement. You can already see the micro movement in the Marabou. There'll be movement here at the back with the saddles, and this lovely rabbit strip tail will be flying all over the place in the current. And that's how you do it. If you enjoyed this video, hit the subscribe button to see more of our flies.